Daniel Defoe, Robinson Crusoe. Imagine you are alone, very alone. No friends, no family, no home, just you and a wild island. What would you do? How would you live? Could you find food? Build a house? Stay strong? Robinson Crusoe is a famous story about a man who loses everything. He must learn to live alone on an island. He learns to use what he has. He learns to survive. This book asks us, what is important in life? Can one person live alone? How strong can a person be? Are you ready to learn about Robinson's Island? Are you ready to think about these questions? Let's begin the adventure. Chapter 1. The Sea's Temptation. In the quiet town of York, England, lived a young man named Robinson Crusoe. He was a curious and restless soul, always dreaming of faraway lands and exciting adventures. His father, a wise and practical man, wished for his son to settle down, to find a respectable trade and live a comfortable life. "Robinson," his father would often say, "the sea is a dangerous place. Stay here, where you are safe. Find a good job, start a family, and you will have a happy life." But Robinson's heart yearned for something more. He longed to see the world, to experience the thrill of sailing across the vast ocean. He imagined exotic ports, strange cultures, and the excitement of a life at sea. "Father," he pleaded, "I cannot stay here. I must see what lies beyond the horizon. I must follow my dreams." His father, though saddened by his son's stubbornness, knew he could not change Robinson's mind. He warned him of the dangers of the sea, the fierce storms, the treacherous waves, and the loneliness of a sailor's life. But Robinson was determined. One day he met a friend who was about to sail to London. Without telling his father, Robinson decided to go with him. He packed his few belongings and boarded the ship, eager for his first adventure. The journey began smoothly, and Robinson was filled with excitement. He saw new sights, heard new stories, and felt the thrill of the ship moving across the water. But soon, the weather changed. A powerful storm arose, and the ship was tossed about like a toy. The wind howled, the waves crashed over the deck, and Robinson was terrified. He remembered his father's warnings, and a wave of regret washed over him. He was right, he thought. I should have listened. He felt sick and afraid, wondering if he would ever see land again. After many long and frightening hours, the storm finally subsided. The ship, damaged but still afloat, reached London. Robinson was relieved, but also changed. He had learned that the sea was not just adventure, it was also danger. Despite his fear, Robinson's desire to travel was not extinguished. He met a sea captain who was preparing to sail to Africa, and Robinson decided to join him. He was still young and adventurous, and he believed he could handle anything. He set sail once more, unaware of the incredible journey that lay ahead. Chapter 2. From Slave to Freedom. Robinson Crusoe, after his first taste of the sea's dangers, found himself in London. Though shaken by the storm, his desire for adventure still burned within him. He met a sea captain preparing to sail to the coast of Africa, and once again he boarded a ship, eager to see new lands. The journey began well, The weather was calm, and Robinson enjoyed the sights and sounds of the sea. But fate, it seemed, had other plans for him. One day their ship was attacked by pirates. These were not the romantic pirates of stories, but cruel men who stole ships and captured people to sell as slaves. Robinson, along with others from the ship, was taken prisoner. He was forced to work for a master, a man who treated him badly. Robinson became a slave, working long hours and enduring harsh conditions. He missed his home, he missed his family, and he regretted not listening to his father's advice. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Robinson felt hopeless, trapped in a life he never imagined. He remembered his father's words, "The sea is a dangerous place." Now he understood the true meaning of those words. But Robinson was not a man to give up easily. He observed his surroundings, looking for a chance to escape. He learned the ways of his captors, understanding their routines and habits. He saw an opportunity when his master asked him and another slave to go fishing in a small boat. One morning they set out in the boat, as usual, but Robinson had a plan. He waited until they were far from shore, then he convinced the other slave to join him. "We can escape," he said. "We can be free." Together they steered the boat away from the coast, heading out into the open sea. They had little food and water, but they were determined to find freedom. They sailed for days, facing hunger and thirst. They were afraid, but they were also hopeful. One day they saw a ship in the distance. They waved and shouted, hoping to be seen. The ship saw them and changed course. It was a kind ship, sailing to Brazil. The captain took them aboard, giving them food and water. He listened to their story and felt sorry for them. In Brazil, Robinson started a new life. He was no longer a slave. He worked hard, learning about farming and trade. He began to make money and build a life for himself. He was grateful for his freedom, but he still had a restless spirit. He still dreamed of adventure. He bought land and became a farmer, growing crops and raising animals. He was successful and comfortable. But the call of the sea, though quieter now, still echoed in his heart. He wanted to travel again. And so he made a decision that would change his life forever. He would go on another voyage. This time, he would be a trader, buying slaves in Africa. Little did he know, this voyage would lead him to a place of solitude and survival, a place where he would truly understand the meaning of freedom. Chapter 3. The Island's Prisoner. Robinson Crusoe, now a free man in Brazil, had found a measure of success. He was a farmer, owning land and growing crops. He had learned to trade and make money. Yet the call of the sea, the yearning for adventure, still echoed in his heart. He decided to embark on another voyage, this time as a merchant, trading for slaves in Africa. The ship set sail, carrying Robinson and a crew of sailors. The first part of the journey was smooth, the sea calm, and the weather fair. But as they sailed further, the sky darkened and the wind began to howl. A powerful storm descended upon them, tossing the ship like a leaf in a hurricane. The sailors struggled to keep the ship afloat, but the storm was relentless. Huge waves crashed over the deck, and the wind ripped at the sails. The ship was damaged, and water began to flood the hold. Robinson, along with the crew, fought to pump out the water, but it was a losing battle. The ship was wrecked. It struck a hidden sandbar, and the waves broke it apart. Robinson, clinging to a piece of wood, was washed ashore. He was alive, but he was alone. He found himself on a small, deserted island. The island was a wild place, covered in trees and surrounded by the vast ocean. Robinson looked around, but he saw no sign of other people. He was alone, completely alone. The ship was gone, broken into pieces by the storm. He felt a wave of despair wash over him. He was wet, cold, and frightened. He had lost everything. He had no food, no shelter, and no idea how he would survive. He thought about his father's warnings, and he felt a deep regret. "I should have listened," he thought. "I should have stayed home." But Robinson was a resourceful man. He knew he had to act quickly if he wanted to survive. He began to explore the beach, searching for anything that might be useful. He found some pieces of wood from the ship, and he gathered them together. He found a small hill, and he decided to build a shelter there. He used the wood from the ship to make a rough hut. It was not much, but it was something. It gave him some protection from the sun and the rain. He searched the island for fresh water. He found a small stream, and he drank deeply. He was grateful for the water, but he knew he needed food. He found some wild fruit, and he ate it. It was not much, but it kept him alive. The first few days were hard. Robinson was alone, scared and unsure of what to do, but he was determined to survive. He began to explore the island, learning about its plants and animals. He searched for more food and water. He tried to make his shelter more comfortable. He realized that he was now a prisoner of this island. The vast ocean surrounded him, cutting him off from the world. He was alone, with only his own skills and determination to keep him alive. He had to learn to live in this wild place, to make it his home. He had to learn to survive. And so, Robinson Crusoe the adventurer became Robinson Crusoe, the island's prisoner. Chapter 4. Building a Life from Nothing. Robinson Crusoe, now stranded on the deserted island, knew he had to act quickly to survive. The shock of the shipwreck had passed, and the reality of his situation set in. He was alone, far from civilization, and without any immediate hope of rescue. He had to build a life from nothing. His first priority was shelter. The rough hut he had built was a start, but it offered little protection from the elements. He decided to find a more secure location. After exploring the island, he found a rocky cliff with a small cave. This cave offered natural protection from rain and sun. He began to move his belongings and tools into the cave, making it his new home. He salvaged what he could from the wrecked ship: pieces of wood, ropes, tools, and even some food washed ashore. He gathered everything carefully, knowing that each item could be vital for his survival. He used his tools to improve his shelter, making it more comfortable and secure. He built a fence around the entrance to keep out wild animals. Food was a constant concern. Robinson explored the island, learning about the edible plants and fruits. He found wild berries, coconuts, and other fruits that helped him stay alive. He learned to hunt small animals, using rocks and sticks to create simple traps. He discovered that the island was home to wild goats, which provided him with a source of meat and milk. He also found a small spring of fresh water, which was essential for his survival. He made containers from clay to store water and food. He learned to cook over a fire, using wood he gathered from the forest. Robinson realized that time was passing quickly. He decided to keep a record of his days. He used a large piece of wood and carved notches into it, marking each day that passed. He wanted to keep track of time, to maintain a sense of order in his isolated life. He began to organize his daily routine. He spent his mornings exploring the island, searching for food and resources. He spent his afternoons working on his shelter, improving his tools, and making clothes from animal skins. He spent his evenings cooking, eating, and reflecting on his situation. Despite the challenges, Robinson remained determined. He used his skills and knowledge to adapt to his new environment. He learned to be resourceful, to use what he had to survive. He found strength in his own resilience, in his ability to overcome adversity. He started to see the island not just as a prison, but as a place where he could build a new life. He began to appreciate the beauty of the natural world around him, the lush vegetation, the clear water, and the abundant wildlife. He found a sense of peace in the solitude, in the quiet rhythm of his days. He was still alone, but he was no longer helpless. He had created a home, found food and water, and established a routine. He had built a life from nothing, proving his strength and his ability to survive. He was Robinson Crusoe, the survivor. Chapter 5. Building a home and keeping a record. Robinson Crusoe, having established the basics for survival, began to focus on making his life on the island more comfortable and organized. He had a shelter, food, and water, but he wanted to create a proper home and keep a record of his time. He decided to improve his cave dwelling. He worked hard to make it more like a house. He built shelves and storage spaces for his tools and supplies. He made a table and a chair from pieces of wood he found. He even made a bed from animal skins, making his nights more comfortable. He realized the importance of security. He built a stronger fence around his dwelling, creating a safe space from wild animals. He dug a small cave behind his dwelling, a hidden place where he could store valuable items and take shelter in case of danger. Robinson understood the importance of tools. He spent time making and improving his tools, creating axes, saws, and hammers from rocks and wood. He learned to make pottery from clay, creating containers for water and food. He even learned to make baskets from woven reeds, which were useful for carrying things. He also started to think about long-term survival. He began to experiment with growing crops. He found seeds from wild plants and planted them near his dwelling. He watered and cared for them, hoping they would grow. He wanted to have a reliable source of food. One of the most important things Robinson did was to start keeping a journal. He realized that time was passing, and he wanted to remember his experiences. He found paper and ink from the ship, and he began to write about his daily life. In his journal, he wrote about his struggles and his successes. He wrote about the challenges of living alone, the loneliness, and the fear. But he also wrote about the beauty of the island, the wonder of nature, and the satisfaction of learning new skills. He wrote about his thoughts and feelings, his hopes and his fears. He wrote about his memories of home, his family, and his past life. He wrote about his faith, his belief in God, and his hope for rescue. The journal became his friend, his companion. It helped him to stay sane and to keep his spirits up. It was a way to connect with his past and to express his thoughts and feelings. Robinson also began to organize his time. He created a daily routine, dividing his time between work, exploration, and rest. He made sure to take care of his physical and mental health. He learned to be patient and to accept his situation. He understood that rescue might take a long time, and he had to be prepared to live on the island for many years. He built a life for himself, a life of hard work, resourcefulness, and self-reliance. He made the island his home, and he learned to live in harmony with nature. He was Robinson Crusoe, the builder, the writer, and the survivor. Chapter 6. The Fever and the Quiet Thoughts. Robinson Crusoe had built a comfortable life for himself on the island. He had his shelter, his tools, and a routine. But one day, a strange sickness took hold of him. He felt hot and weak, like a fire burned inside him. His head pounded with pain, and he couldn't even sit up. He lay on his makeshift bed, feeling helpless. He was terribly afraid. "What if I die here?" he thought. "All alone, with no one to bury me?" The loneliness he had kept at bay for so long now felt overwhelming. He missed the sounds of people, the warmth of a human touch. He remembered his father's warnings about the sea, and a wave of regret washed over him. "If only I had listened," he whispered. Because he was too sick to do anything, he had hours and days to think. He remembered his life before the island, the choices he had made, the adventures he had sought. He realized how much he had taken for granted. He remembered the Bible he had rescued from the ship and reached for it, his hands trembling. He read the words, and they spoke to him in a new way. He thought about God and realized how little he had acknowledged the blessings he had received. He had been so focused on his own desires that he had forgotten to be grateful for the simple things. The air he breathed, the food he found, the shelter he had built. He prayed, his voice weak and shaky. He asked for forgiveness for his selfishness and his pride. He promised that if he recovered, he would try to live a better life, a more thankful life. Slowly, the fever began to break. He felt a little stronger each day. He realized that this sickness had been more than just a physical trial. It had been a turning point. He understood that his time on the island was not just a punishment, but also an opportunity for growth, for reflection. He decided to change his ways. He wanted to be a kinder, more thoughtful person. He wanted to appreciate the beauty of the island, the simple gifts of nature. He wanted to use his skills to help others, if he ever had the chance. He continued to read the Bible, finding comfort and strength in its words. He began to see his life on the island in a new light, as a journey of self-discovery, a chance to become a better version of himself. He understood that the fever had been a wake-up call, a reminder that true strength came not from adventure, but from humility and gratitude. Robinson Crusoe, the survivor, was now also Robinson Crusoe, the seeker of a better life. Chapter 7. Learning to farm and live off the land. Robinson Crusoe, now recovered from his illness, felt a renewed sense of purpose. He understood that survival on the island meant more than just finding food and shelter. It meant creating a sustainable life. He began to focus on agriculture, learning to farm and live off the land. He remembered seeing wild plants and grains growing on the island. He decided to experiment with planting seeds. He gathered the seeds from wild barley and rice, and he prepared a small plot of land near his shelter. He used his tools to dig and till the soil, making it ready for planting. He observed the patterns of the sun and the rain. He learned when to plant and when to water. He built a simple irrigation system, using clay pipes to bring water from the stream to his crops. He carefully tended his plants, removing weeds and protecting them from animals. It was a slow process, but Robinson was patient. He understood that farming required time and effort. He learned to appreciate the rhythm of nature, the seasons, and the cycles of growth. He found a sense of satisfaction in working with the land, in creating something from nothing. As his crops grew, he learned to harvest and process them. He built a simple mill to grind the barley and rice into flour. He learned to bake bread using a makeshift oven he built from clay and stones. The smell of freshly baked bread filled his shelter, a comforting reminder of home. He also turned his attention to raising animals. He had observed wild goats roaming the island, and he decided to try to domesticate them. He built a fenced enclosure near his shelter, creating a safe space for the goats. He used his skills to capture young goats and bring them into the enclosure. He learned to care for the goats, providing them with food and water. He learned to milk them, providing himself with a source of fresh milk. He even learned to make cheese and butter, adding variety to his diet. He also explored the island for other useful resources. He found wild sugarcane and learned to extract its juice, creating a sweet syrup. He found wild grapes and learned to make wine, adding a touch of luxury to his simple life. He learned to use the resources of the island wisely, without wasting anything. He understood that sustainability was crucial for his long-term survival. He learned to respect the balance of nature, to take only what he needed. Robinson found a sense of peace and contentment in his agricultural pursuits. He enjoyed the physical work, the connection to the land, and the satisfaction of providing for himself. He felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing that he had transformed the wild island into a productive farm. He understood that his life on the island was not just about survival, it was also about growth and self-sufficiency. He had learned to adapt to his environment, to use his skills and knowledge to create a fulfilling life. He was Robinson Crusoe, the farmer, the provider, and the master of his own destiny. Chapter 8. Looking around and making plans. With a good farm and a daily routine, Robinson Crusoe knew it was time to really understand his situation. He needed to know everything about the island, check his supplies, and make plans for the future. He understood that living here wasn't just about getting food each day. It was about being ready for what might happen. He started by exploring the island more carefully. He walked along the beach, noting the best places to bring a boat onto the shore and where the sea was rough. He climbed the highest hills, making a picture of the island in his mind and finding places that could be dangerous. He found new places with fresh water and areas where there were lots of wild fruits and animals. Robinson knew it was important to know his surroundings. He made a detailed map of the island. He marked important places like his shelter, his farm, the spring with clean water, and the places where he found useful things. He also wrote down the direction of the wind and how the ocean moved. Then he checked all his supplies. He made a list of his tools, his weapons, his food, and his clothes. He looked carefully at what he had and what he needed. He realized that some of his supplies were limited and would run out. He needed to find ways to make more or find other things to use. He began to think about big projects. He needed to find ways to make his life on the island last longer. He thought about building a better boat, one he could use to explore the waters around the island or even try to go back home. He also thought about making a stronger shelter, one that could handle storms and wild animals. Robinson knew it was important to plan for bad times. He thought about what he would do if he got hurt or if his supplies were destroyed. He made backup plans, thinking about other places to find food, water, and shelter. He also thought about how he would protect himself from animals or any people who might come to the island. He thought about how much time had passed. He realized he had been on the island for many years. He wondered if anyone would ever rescue him. He started to think about living his whole life on the island. He decided to prepare for that, to make his life as comfortable and good as possible. Robinson also thought about how he had changed inside. He had grown a lot since he came to the island. He had learned to be patient, to use what he had, and to take care of himself. He had also become more religious, finding comfort and strength in his belief in God. He understood that his time on the island had changed him. He decided to keep learning and growing. He wanted to use his time on the island well, to learn new skills, to get more knowledge, and to become a better person. He wanted to make his lonely life as meaningful as possible. Robinson Crusoe, the planner, the explorer, and the thoughtful survivor, looked to both today and tomorrow. Chapter 9. The Boat That Was Too Big. Robinson Crusoe, feeling ready for a new adventure, wanted to build a boat. Not just any boat, but a large, strong one. He imagined sailing around his island, exploring the nearby waters, and maybe, just maybe, finding a way to return home. He searched the island's forest and found a giant tree, tall and thick. "This is perfect," he thought. He grabbed his axe and began to chop. The work was long and hard. His arms ached, and sweat dripped from his forehead. But day after day he chopped and sawed, until finally the great tree fell to the ground with a loud crash. With excitement, he started to shape the tree into a boat. He used his tools to carve out the inside, making it look like a big canoe. He worked carefully, smoothing the wood and shaping the sides. He was so excited to have a boat that he could use. But as he finished, he realized he had made a huge mistake. The boat was enormous. It was far too big to move. He tried to push it, he tried to pull it, but it wouldn't budge. He even tried to use levers and ropes, but the boat was too heavy. Robinson sat down, feeling very disappointed. He had spent so much time and energy on this boat, but it was useless. He felt foolish for not thinking about the size before he started. He had learned a hard lesson. Even good ideas can go wrong if you don't plan carefully. He realized he couldn't do everything by himself. He needed to be realistic about what he could achieve. He decided to try again, but this time he would make a smaller boat. He found a smaller but still strong tree. He carefully measured the wood and started to carve. He made sure the boat was light enough to move. He worked slowly and carefully, learning from his previous mistake. Finally, he finished his new boat. It was smaller than the first one, but it was well made and sturdy. He was proud of his work. He could easily move it from his shelter to the water. He put the boat into the sea. It floated perfectly. He climbed in and rowed around the bay. The boat moved easily through the water. He was thrilled. He could now explore the coast of his island. Robinson learned an important lesson about patience and planning. He understood that big dreams need small steps. He realized that he couldn't always get what he wanted right away. He learned to be happy with the things he could do, and he appreciated the small victories. Robinson Crusoe, the boat builder, had become wiser and more practical. Chapter 10. Taming the Wild Goats. With his smaller, more manageable boat finished, Robinson Crusoe turned his attention to another important task: securing a reliable source of food. He had been hunting and gathering, but he wanted a more stable and consistent supply. He decided to try taming the wild goats that roamed the island. He had observed the goats for a long time. He knew their habits and where they liked to graze. He noticed that the young goats, the kids, were easier to catch. He decided to focus on capturing and taming them. He began by building a strong fence, creating a large pen near his shelter. He used thick branches and sturdy posts, making sure the fence was high enough to keep the goats from jumping out. He also made a gate so he could easily enter and exit the pen. Then he started to catch the young goats. He used his hunting skills and his knowledge of the goats' behavior to trap them. He would set simple snares and hide near the grazing areas, waiting for the right moment. When he caught a young goat, he would carefully bring it back to his pen. He would treat it gently, giving it food and water. He would spend time with the goat, talking to it and stroking it. He wanted to gain its trust. Slowly, the young goats began to trust him. They learned to come to him for food and water. They became used to his presence. Robinson was patient and kind, and he treated the goats with respect. As the goats grew, they became tame. They would follow him around the pen, and they would let him touch them. Robinson was happy. He had successfully tamed the wild goats. He started to use the goats for milk and meat. He learned to milk the female goats, providing himself with fresh milk. He also learned to butcher the goats, providing himself with a steady supply of meat. He used the goats' skins to make clothing and blankets. He used their bones to make tools and utensils. He used every part of the goat, wasting nothing. Robinson was proud of his accomplishment. He had not only secured a reliable food source, but he had also established a sustainable way of living. He had learned to work with the animals of the island, creating a harmonious relationship with nature. He understood that his ability to tame the goats was a testament to his patience and his determination. He had learned to adapt to his environment, to use his skills and knowledge to create a better life for himself. He was Robinson Crusoe, the goat herder, the animal tamer, and the wise survivor. Chapter 11. The Surprise on the Sand. Robinson Crusoe had been living on the island for many years. He had built a good life for himself. He had his shelter, his farm, and his tamed goats. He felt safe and comfortable. But one day everything changed when he took a walk along the beach. The sun was shining, and the waves were gently rolling onto the shore. Robinson was enjoying the peacefulness of the island. He walked along the sand, lost in his thoughts. Then he saw it. Right there, in the soft, wet sand, was a footprint. A clear, perfect footprint. It was the print of a human foot. Robinson stopped walking. His heart started to beat faster. He couldn't believe his eyes. He looked around quickly, but he didn't see anyone. He looked back at the footprint. It was still there. He felt a sudden rush of fear. He was no longer alone on the island. Someone else was here. He didn't know who it was or what they wanted. He started to think about all the bad things that could happen. Were they friendly? Were they enemies? Were they people who would hurt him? He had no idea. He became very careful. He walked slowly and quietly, looking for any other signs of someone. He checked his weapons, making sure they were ready to use. He was very nervous. He hurried back to his shelter. He made it even stronger. He added more fences and made hidden places to hide. He wanted to be safe. He was afraid of what he might find. He remembered the stories he had heard about people who ate other people. He imagined terrible things happening. He became very worried. He couldn't sleep well at night. He was scared to leave his shelter during the day. The island, which had been his safe home, now felt dangerous. He looked at the trees and the bushes, wondering if someone was hiding there. He looked at the ocean, wondering if someone had arrived by boat. He realized he had become too comfortable. He had forgotten that he was still in a wild and dangerous place. He understood that he needed to be more careful. He needed to be ready for anything. He decided to explore the island, but he would be very careful. He would look for any signs of other people, but he would also be ready to protect himself. He knew that his life had changed forever. Robinson Crusoe, the lonely survivor, was now Robinson Crusoe, the frightened and watchful man. Chapter 12. A New Hiding Place. After finding the footprint on the beach, Robinson Crusoe felt a great fear. He knew he was no longer alone on the island, and he didn't know who else was there. This made him very nervous and worried. He decided he needed to make his shelter even safer. He thought about his current home, the cave he had made into a house. He realized it wasn't very hidden. Anyone walking along the beach could see it. He needed a place that was more secret, a place where he could hide if he needed to. He started to explore the island again, but this time he was looking for a hiding place. He walked through the forest, looking carefully at the trees and the rocks. He wanted to find a place that was hard to see. After a few days of searching, he found a small cave hidden behind some thick bushes. It was a good hiding place. It was hard to see from the beach, and it was also hard to see from the forest. He started to make this new cave into a second home. He carried some of his tools and supplies to the cave. He made a small bed, and he brought some food and water. He wanted to be ready if he had to hide there. He also made a secret path to the cave. He cleared a small trail through the bushes, but he made sure it was hard to see. He wanted to be able to get to his hiding place without being seen. He spent a lot of time thinking about the people who might have made the footprint. He remembered stories he had heard about people who ate other people. He was very afraid. He didn't want to meet these people. He decided to be very careful. He didn't leave his main shelter very often. When he did go out, he was always looking around. He carried his weapons, and he was ready to use them. He also started to watch the beach very carefully. He wanted to see if anyone came to the island by boat. He climbed to the top of the highest hill, and he used his telescope to look out over the ocean. He lived in fear for many days. He didn't know what to expect. He was afraid of the unknown. He was afraid of the people who might be on the island. He understood that his life had changed again. He was no longer just trying to survive. He was also trying to stay safe. He was Robinson Crusoe, the hidden man, always watching and always waiting. Chapter 13. The Broken Ship and the New Fear. Robinson Crusoe, his heart still heavy with the fear of the unknown footprint, remained constantly alert. He spent his days scanning the horizon, both longing for a rescue ship and dreading the arrival of strangers. He stayed hidden, venturing out only when absolutely necessary. Then, a violent storm changed everything. The sky turned dark, and the wind began to howl. Huge waves crashed against the shore, and the rain fell in sheets. Robinson watched from his hidden cave, remembering the terrible storm that had brought him to the island. He worried about any ships at sea, knowing the power of the storm. When the storm finally passed and the sea calmed, Robinson cautiously made his way to the beach. He wanted to see if the storm had washed up anything useful. What he found shocked him. A large ship lay broken on the rocks, its timbers splintered and scattered. It was a Spanish ship, clearly wrecked in the storm. Robinson carefully approached the wreckage, hoping to find tools, food, or other supplies. He found barrels of wine and rum, which he carefully collected. He also found useful tools and weapons, which he took back to his shelter. But then he found something that made him feel very sad. He saw the bodies of several sailors, washed ashore by the waves. They were dead, victims of the storm. Robinson felt a pang of sorrow for these lost men, imagining their families and the grief they would feel. A new worry filled Robinson's mind. He realized that the people who had made the footprint on the beach might have been from this very ship. If any of them had survived, they could still be alive, somewhere on the island. He became even more cautious. He returned to his hidden cave, his mind racing. He had to decide what to do. He knew that any survivors might be desperate for help, but they could also be dangerous. He didn't know their intentions. He decided to observe the wreckage and the surrounding area carefully. He wanted to see if anyone came ashore. He wanted to know who they were and what they wanted. He climbed to a high point on the island, using his telescope to scan the beach and the ocean. Days passed, and Robinson saw no one. He wondered if everyone from the ship had perished in the storm. But he couldn't be sure. He remained on high alert, always watching, always listening. He also considered exploring the wreckage again, hoping to find more supplies or clues about the survivors. But he knew he had to be extremely careful. He didn't want to walk into a trap. The wrecked ship brought a new level of fear and uncertainty to Robinson's life. He was no longer just dealing with the unknown footprint. He was now dealing with the potential presence of other people, people who might be desperate and dangerous. Robinson Crusoe, the isolated survivor, became Robinson Crusoe, the cautious and fearful watcher, always looking over his shoulder. Chapter 14. A Dream Come True. Robinson Crusoe, his nerves stretched tight from weeks of fear, kept his vigilant watch. He scanned the horizon, hoping for a sign of rescue, yet dreading the arrival of the unknown. He was a shadow, moving only in the deepest cover, a ghost on his own island. Then, one day, as he peered through his telescope from his hidden lookout, he saw a sight that sent a jolt of both hope and horror through him. A small boat, unlike any he'd seen before, was approaching the shore. Its design was strange, its crew even stranger. He watched as the boat landed on the beach. The men who stepped out were not sailors. They were dark-skinned, their faces painted with strange markings. They carried crude weapons, wooden clubs and sharpened stones. Their movements were wild, their voices loud and harsh. Robinson crept closer, hiding behind thick bushes, his heart pounding in his chest. He saw them gather wood and build a fire. The smell of roasting meat drifted through the air, but it was a smell that made his stomach churn. He watched in disbelief as they began to feast. He saw them eating something that made his blood run cold. They were eating human flesh. A wave of revulsion and fear washed over Robinson. He realized who these men were. They were cannibals, the savage people he had dreaded. They were the ones who had left the footprint. He knew he was in grave danger. These were not lost sailors, but brutal killers. He had to be extremely careful. He had to stay hidden. For days, he watched them. They returned to the island regularly, bringing prisoners with them. He witnessed their horrifying rituals, the brutal killings, and the gruesome feasts. He was sickened by what he saw, his stomach twisting with disgust. He felt a burning rage, a desire to stop their evil. But he was just one man, armed with only a few guns and his wits. He knew he couldn't attack them directly. He began to formulate a plan. He realized that the cannibals, in their cruelty, were predictable. They followed a pattern. He could use this against them. He studied the island, looking for places to hide and ambush. He marked the paths they used and the places they gathered. He thought about how he could use the terrain to his advantage. He remembered his weapons and the tools he had made. He thought about how he could use them to create traps and defenses. He began to plan a way to turn the island into a deadly maze for the cannibals. He thought about the prisoners they brought, wondering if he could somehow rescue them. He knew it would be incredibly dangerous, but he also knew that he couldn't stand by and watch them die. Robinson Crusoe, the isolated survivor, was now Robinson Crusoe, the strategist, the avenger. He was ready to fight for his survival, and perhaps for the survival of others. Chapter 15. Meeting Friday. Robinson Crusoe was very careful. He watched the cannibals from far away. He knew they were dangerous, and he wanted to be ready for them. He had a plan to protect himself. One day he saw something that made him act quickly. The cannibals brought 2 people to the beach. One man looked very scared, and the other man looked brave. When the cannibals tried to kill the scared man, the brave man ran away. He ran very fast, right towards Robinson's side of the island. The cannibals ran after him, shouting loudly. Robinson saw his chance to help. He knew he had to act fast. He took his gun and ran out of his hiding place. He shot his gun into the air. The loud noise scared the cannibals. They stopped and looked around, confused. Robinson quickly shot again, this time at one of the cannibals. The man fell to the ground. The other cannibals got scared and ran back to their boat. The brave man stopped running and looked at Robinson. He was surprised and thankful. Robinson made signs to show he was friendly. The man came closer. Robinson gave him food and water. The man was very hungry and thirsty. He ate and drank very quickly. Robinson tried to talk to the man, but they didn't understand each other. He used his hands and made signs. He learned that the man's name was Friday. Robinson took Friday back to his shelter. He wanted to keep him safe from the cannibals. He also wanted a friend. He was tired of being alone. He started to teach Friday English. He taught him the names of things and how to speak simple sentences. Friday learned quickly. He wanted to make Robinson happy. Robinson also showed Friday how he lived on the island. He taught him how to use tools, how to cook, and how to protect himself. Friday was thankful for everything. They became good friends. Robinson was no longer alone. He had someone to talk to, someone to work with, someone to share his life. But Robinson didn't forget about the cannibals. He knew they would come back. He and Friday worked together to make their shelter stronger. They made plans to fight if they had to. Robinson had found a friend, but he also knew they were still in danger. Robinson Crusoe, the lonely man, was now Robinson Crusoe, the teacher, the friend, and the warrior, ready to face whatever came next. Chapter 16. Learning from each other. With Friday by his side, Robinson Crusoe's life changed completely. He was no longer alone, and the island, while still dangerous, felt less lonely. He and Friday spent their days learning from each other and preparing for whatever might come. Robinson worked hard to teach Friday English. He pointed to things and said their names, repeating them over and over. Friday was a quick learner, and soon he could say many words and simple sentences. He was eager to understand Robinson and to communicate with him. Friday, in turn, taught Robinson about his own culture and language. He showed him how to find new kinds of food on the island, foods that Robinson had never noticed before. He taught him how to make different kinds of tools and weapons, using materials that Robinson hadn't known how to use. They worked together to make their shelter even stronger. They built a higher fence around it, and they made traps to catch any animals that might try to get in. They also practiced using their weapons, so they would be ready to defend themselves if the cannibals returned. Robinson learned that Friday was a skilled hunter and a brave warrior. Friday was also loyal and kind. He was grateful to Robinson for saving his life, and he was eager to help him in any way he could. They spent many hours talking and sharing stories. Robinson told Friday about his life in England, about his family, and about his adventures at sea. Friday told Robinson about his own people, about their customs, and about the wars they fought. Robinson learned that Friday had been a prisoner of the cannibals. He had been captured in a battle with another tribe. He was supposed to be killed and eaten, but he had escaped. Robinson felt sorry for Friday. He knew that Friday had suffered a lot. He was glad that he had saved him. They became close friends. They trusted each other, and they relied on each other. They were like brothers. But they never forgot the danger that still existed. They knew that the cannibals could return at any time. They had to be ready. They continued to make their shelter stronger, and they continued to practice their fighting skills. They were determined to survive. Together, Robinson Crusoe, the lonely survivor, and Friday, the rescued warrior, were now partners, ready to face whatever the island might throw at them. Chapter 17. The Ship and the Dangerous Men. Robinson Crusoe and Friday had become a strong team. They trusted each other and worked together to stay safe. They knew the cannibals could return, so they always watched the sea. One day they saw a big ship coming towards the island. Robinson felt a rush of hope. "Maybe this is our way home," he said to Friday. But as the ship got closer, they saw something strange. The men on the ship were fighting. They shouted and pushed each other. It was clear something was wrong. Robinson and Friday watched carefully. They saw some men tying up others. They realized these weren't friendly sailors. These were men who had taken over the ship, mutineers. "These are bad men," Robinson told Friday. "They have taken the ship from the captain." They saw the mutineers bring some men ashore. These men looked scared and sad. Robinson realized they were the captain and his loyal crew. The mutineers left them on the beach and told them they wouldn't be leaving the island. Robinson felt sorry for the captain and his men. He knew they were in danger. "We have to help them," he said to Friday. "This is also our chance to leave." They made a plan. They waited until it was dark. Then they quietly went to the beach. They saw the mutineers sleeping near their small boat. Robinson and Friday moved like shadows. They surprised the sleeping men. They used their weapons and their skills to quickly take control of the boat. The mutineers woke up confused and scared. Then they went to find the captain and his crew. The captain was very surprised and thankful. He couldn't believe they had saved him. He thanked Robinson and Friday many times. Friday, who was now very good at understanding Robinson, helped to explain the situation to the captain. He showed the captain how they had taken the boat. Robinson told the captain his story about being shipwrecked and living on the island for many years. The captain listened carefully and was amazed. "You are brave men," the captain said. "We will work together to take back my ship." Robinson knew this was a risky plan, but he also knew it was their best chance to escape the island. He was Robinson Crusoe, the man who wanted to return home, and Friday, his loyal friend, ready to fight alongside him. Chapter 18. Taking Control of the Big Ship. Robinson Crusoe, Friday, and the captain made a plan to get the ship back from the bad men. They knew it was risky, but they really wanted to leave the island. The captain told them, "These men are fighting each other. They're not paying attention. We can use that to our advantage." He meant they could sneak up on them easily. They decided to attack at night when it was dark. They took the small boat they had captured. They rowed quietly towards the big ship, like shadows on the water. When they reached the ship, they saw the bad men were all over the place. Some were sleeping, some were drinking, and some were shouting at each other. They were not expecting anyone to attack. Robinson, Friday, and the captain jumped onto the ship. They moved quickly and quietly. They used their weapons to surprise the bad men. There was a short, loud fight. The bad men were confused and scared. They didn't know what was happening. They were not organized, so they lost quickly. The captain took control of his ship again. He was very happy and thanked Robinson and Friday. He said they were very brave. Robinson told the captain, "I want to go back to England. I've been on this island for many, many years." The captain said, "Of course we will take you and your friend." They started to get the ship ready for the long trip. They gathered food and water. They fixed anything that was broken. They made sure the ship was safe to sail. Robinson felt a mix of feelings. He was very excited to go home. He had missed his family and his old life. He couldn't wait to see them again. But he was also sad. He had lived on the island for so long. It had become his home. He had learned to live in the wild, to take care of himself. He had made a good friend in Friday. He knew he would miss the quiet of the island, the sound of the waves, the feeling of freedom. He would miss the life he had built. But he also knew it was time to leave. He had to go back to his old life, to see what had changed, to find out what was waiting for him. He and Friday watched as the island got smaller and smaller. They sailed away, leaving their island life behind. They were going to a new life, a new adventure. Robinson Crusoe, the island man, was now Robinson Crusoe, the man on his way home. Chapter 19. The Journey Home. With the ship reclaimed and the mutineers subdued, Robinson Crusoe, Friday, and the captain set sail for England. The journey was long, and the sea was often rough, but they were all filled with hope. Robinson felt a mix of excitement and sadness as the island faded into the distance. He was eager to see his homeland again, but he also knew he would miss the island that had been his home for so many years. The captain was a skilled sailor, and he knew the sea well. He kept the ship on course, and he made sure that everyone was safe. Friday, who had never been on a long sea voyage, was fascinated by everything he saw. He watched the waves, the stars, and the birds with wide eyes. Robinson spent his time telling the captain about his years on the island. He told him about his struggles, his triumphs, and his friendship with Friday. The captain listened with amazement, marveling at Robinson's resilience and resourcefulness. They encountered storms and calm seas, but they persevered. The captain taught Friday more about sailing, and Friday proved to be a quick learner. He helped with the work on the ship, and he became a valuable member of the crew. As they approached England, Robinson's heart began to pound with anticipation. He imagined what his home would look like, and he wondered if his family was still alive. When they finally reached the English coast, Robinson felt a wave of emotion wash over him. He had finally returned home. He was filled with joy and gratitude. They docked the ship in a busy port. Robinson stepped onto the land, feeling the solid ground beneath his feet. He took a deep breath of the familiar air. He and Friday went to find Robinson's family. He was overjoyed to discover that his father was still alive. They had a tearful reunion. Robinson told his father about his adventures, about the shipwreck, the island, and Friday. His father listened with amazement and pride. Robinson also discovered that he had become a wealthy man. The plantations he had owned in Brazil had become very successful. He was now a rich man. He helped the captain. The captain was a good man, so Robinson helped him to make his ship ready for the next trip. Robinson and Friday stayed in England for a while. They adjusted to their new life. Robinson was happy to be home, but he never forgot the island. He remembered his years of solitude and the lessons he had learned. Robinson Crusoe, the returning adventurer, had come full circle. Chapter 20. More Adventures and a New Life. After returning to England, Robinson Crusoe found himself in a strange new world. He was no longer a solitary survivor, but a wealthy and respected man. He had to adjust to a life of comfort and society, a life very different from his years on the island. He spent time with his father, sharing stories of his adventures and catching up on the years they had been apart. He also spent time with Friday, helping him to adjust to English life. Friday was fascinated by everything he saw, the bustling cities, the crowded streets, and the strange customs. Robinson, however, found that he still had a restless spirit. He missed the adventure, the challenges, and the feeling of being in control of his own destiny. He missed the island. He decided to embark on another journey. This time, he wanted to explore the lands beyond the sea. He wanted to see new places and experience new cultures. He and Friday set out on a new adventure, traveling across Europe and beyond. They saw many amazing things and met many interesting people. They faced dangers and challenges, but they also found kindness and hospitality. One of their most memorable adventures was a journey through the mountains. They were traveling on horseback when they were attacked by a large bear. Friday, who had learned to be a skilled warrior, fought bravely. He used his spear to defend himself and Robinson. The fight was fierce, and the bear was strong. But Friday was quick and agile. He managed to kill the bear, saving both their lives. Robinson was amazed by Friday's courage and skill. He realized that Friday was not just a friend, but also a hero. They continued their travels, exploring new lands and having many more adventures. Robinson learned to appreciate the world beyond the island, but he also never forgot the lessons he had learned during his years of solitude. He realized that true wealth was not just about money, but also about friendship, courage, and the ability to adapt to any situation. He understood that life was a journey, and that every experience, good or bad, could teach him something valuable. Robinson Crusoe, the island survivor, the returning traveler, was now Robinson Crusoe, the explorer, the friend, and the man who had learned to embrace the world. He had found adventure, friendship, and a new understanding of life. His story, though filled with hardship, was ultimately a story of resilience, hope, and the enduring power of the human spirit. Robinson Crusoe's story is about a man who lost everything but learned to build a new life. He shows us that people are strong and can survive even when things are very hard. We learn that real riches aren't just money. They are good friends, courage, and knowing how to use what you have. Robinson's friendship with Friday shows us that people can be friends, even if they are very different. He also shows us that we can learn to live in new places and make them our homes. He used his smarts to survive and make a good life. Even when he was alone, Robinson never gave up hope. He believed he would be saved. This shows us that hope can keep us going, even when things are bad. If you were alone on an island, what would you do to live? What does Robinson's friendship with Friday teach us about being friends? What did Robinson learn about himself on the island? What is more important, having things or having friends and hope? What can we learn from Robinson's story about being strong when life is hard? We'd love to hear your thoughts. What part of Robinson's story stood out to you the most? Share your answers to these questions or any other thoughts you have in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, please subscribe for more like this. Let's talk about Robinson Crusoe together. See you next time.